Cool.
We're live! Hooray!
Hello, everybody. Just as a quick reminder, we will be going into spoilers, so if you haven't read this book, you should probably get out, and you can come watch it later after you've read it. Okay, so do we want to start with like overall thoughts, feelings, ratings?
Okay. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that this one was not the slog that the previous one was really at all, in my opinion. It definitely did pick up a lot more.
Yes, definitely. I thought the pacing was so much better on this one.
Yeah, a few people told me on Instagram when they saw my photo of my TBR for September and they saw that that book was on it and they said, Winter's Heart is a slog, good luck. And I'm like, well, the last one was too, so it's not a big deal. And it turned out to be like, there was a lot more happening in it.
Yes.
I don't know.
Oh, great. Hey, if you're going to be loud, you have to leave.
My cousin's right here. She's
sorry about that. So I thought the same thing, that the pacing was a lot better, and I was prepared for it to be slow. I think I've mentioned this in various places before, but I remember like on my original read that this book felt really slow to me, and I thought it was like the longest book in the series, but it isn't. And I think I was mistaken, because what I remember being really slow is like Egwene and her group moving through the snow, like going to Tarvalon. And a lot of that happened in the Path of Daggers. So I think I was thinking that was in Winter's Heart because it was winter and it was snowy. But the scenes that I remember actually being so slow, I think were actually from the Path of Daggers. And so I think I had confused myself into thinking that Winter's Heart was really slow for me when really I was thinking of the Path of Daggers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there were a lot of other things. I mean, this one was a little bit slower than like most of the books in the series, but really it had a lot of stuff that happened still.
There was a lot of stuff that happened, especially at the end. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened at the end. I'm just gonna pull up the chat real quick. And I'm not using my headphones. This is the first time I've been brave enough not to use them. If we end up getting some sort of echo, then I can definitely turn them back on. Or not turn them back on, but use them.
Turn them back.
That doesn't make sense. Okay. Chat is up. We are good.
All right.
Let's see. What else? We can start with things at the beginning and work our way through. Well, okay. What did you overall rate it?
Well, I rated it 4 stars, just like all the other ones. I've given pretty much all of them 4 stars at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Even the Path of Daggers?
Yeah, even the Path of Daggers, because even though the Path of Daggers was so like slow and just so hard to get through, it's still just the whole concept and everything of this series is just too genius and too well thought out to give any of them 3 stars. Like they would have to have some pretty like annoying stuff in them for me to give any of them 3 stars.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Speaking of it being like so well thought out, there were a lot of characters that showed up in this book that we haven't seen in a while that aren't main characters. So like some of the Shan-Chan, we had Shan-Chan people that we were introduced in like book 2 or 3 that we haven't seen. Well, I guess Eyanin and Bail Domon we have seen at least once since like that part of the series, but you know, like the Suldam, like Bethamin, and those Suldam that found out that they actually could channel and all that stuff that happened when Egwene escaped from them, like those people showed up again, which was really cool. So we had a lot of characters, I feel like, that were reintroduced in this book, and that was really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we start the book with like Perrin, which I love Perrin, so I was glad that we got to get back into his point of view. So he, you know, was in trying to deal with Masema, and then he found out that Fail got captured. And I remember from previous reads when Fail was captured and then like trying to escape and like things like that happening, or at least plotting escape. So it was good to like get to that point of the book because I knew that it was coming. But I still think we're in the very early stages of that plot, and so I'm interested to see like where it goes from there. What did you think about Berelain like escaping from the the Aiel, the Shido, and then her new dynamic with Perrin now that Fael's out of the picture? She seems to be kind of like trying to take advantage of the situation, you know? She like took him to her tent and had him like there overnight, and then everybody else in the camp thinks that he's like cheating on Fael. So mad about it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I had forgotten about that part. That's really weird. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like Berlin, but I didn't like that she put Perrin in that situation and that she was trying to take advantage of him. And I remember in their conversation, because he's like trying to like leave, and she keeps trying to talk to him and make him stay in her tent. And she's like, well, you know, contrary to what you might have heard, I really haven't slept with that many men. You would only be, I think she said, like the third person, and the other two were for political, but you would just be for fun. I was just like, oh my God, Berlin, like, leave him alone. He's not interested.
Gosh.
Yeah, it made me laugh.
Yeah, really, just because Fael's not there doesn't mean that he's just like...
Right, and I had thought that her and Fael were starting to like not get on the same page, but like starting to work together a little bit. And now she's gonna go and do this. Like, Fael's definitely not gonna like her after that.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and so part of the people that were captured with Fael were, of course, Morghese was there, but also Alliandre, who's queen. So that was interesting, and I'm sure that, well, we kind of saw a little bit of that, but Savannah's going to try to take advantage of the fact that she has like high-ranking noble people as some of her servants.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the rest of that plays out later too.
Yeah. Let's see. We have Elaine that's in Camelin.
Finally.
Finally there, trying to take her throne.
Yeah, she's kind of took forever to get there.
It did. And we saw a lot of like political stuff, like her trying to deal with just like running the kingdom, feeding people, things like that, which were interesting, but also kind of boring at the same time.
Yeah, and also I kept thinking about how much less of that she would necessarily have to deal with if she had gotten there sooner. Basically, like a lot of it kind of built up while she was gone. I really got that feeling, kind of.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so there's an attempt on her life, right? Dylan's there, and at first she thinks that Dylan might be involved and like hired these people, but of course that the assassins attack Dylan. And Dylan was like trying to call for help. So that kind of cements in Elaine's mind that Dylan is on her side. And I think Dylan is truly on her. I mean, this whole time she's been pretty consistent, even when Rand was in Camelin saying that she supports Elaine for the throne. And I hadn't put this together at first, but I kind of realized it afterwards. But we actually were introduced to the guy. Okay, so there were the assassins that tried to kill Elaine, and there was a guard who came in and like saved her at the last minute. And yeah, sorry, I was trying to make sure I'm thinking of the right characters because this is recorded. I always feel like I'm always nervous I'm going to say something wrong, but whatever. This is what I think, or what I am pretty sure I know. So the guy who comes in, his last name is Hanlon. He is actually a dark friend. He was hired by this lady, Sheane or something, and she's a dark friend who she killed Jekym Carradine, and she has, no, it's not Leander, and she has Fiolan, one of the Aes Sedai, that's Black Aja. And so she hired this guy and put this whole plan into place. She hired this guy to save Elaine from the assassins so that he would be promoted and he gets to be captain of her guard. So like that's something we got to keep an eye on because we know that he's evil. And I don't know how many times they're gonna like mention that, because I feel like sometimes what Robert Jordan does is he mentions that someone is evil like earlier and then like he won't say it again. So when you see them again, if you don't remember that they're evil, you might not necessarily know their motives. But I remember that because I was going through chapter summaries and stuff. And I think that if I wasn't doing all these chapter summaries and like looking over them before live shows and using them for the other videos that I make, that I wouldn't be able to make some of these connections, because even when you read the books back to back, there's just like so much information in them that's really hard to keep track of it all.
No, yeah, I think like it took him a lot of times to show up before I realized that he was totally evil. Basically, like he basically had to state it to those other people.
Right. Oh, one of the things in this section that I really, really liked seeing was the ceremony for Elaine and Avienda to become first sisters.
I know, that was such an awesome part. I agree.
And I mean, until
they had to punch each other.
Yes, they just slapped each other. It was so funny. And like the things that they said about each other, it was so cute. I really love their friendship. And I really had no idea that becoming first sisters involved the power at all and any sort of like linking or bonding. So like that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. That whole part was really cool. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because really, like, that's what friendship is about. You have to also, admit what you're jealous of the other person for and all kinds of other stuff. And you got to get that all out into the open. And that's how you understand each other more. And that's how, it totally makes sense. But that's so clever, just that whole thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Aiel culture is so interesting. And it's just, this is so different than anything I've ever read before. I really love that ceremony the best. Rafe Judkins, I think last Wednesday or maybe the Wednesday before, was asking on his like What Wednesday Twitter question, like, what's your favorite cultural thing from I just read that section and I tweeted that like I really like that part.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that you wrote that.
Yeah, that part was really cool. So what did you think of Rand bonding the three girls?
Oh my gosh, that surprised me because I definitely didn't think it was possible for one warder to be bonded to multiple people. And so the fact that like when they all find out that Alana had bonded him, the only thing that upsets them about it was that she did it without his permission. And they didn't really care that like she had already bonded him just because like you can be bonded to other people. And so they were just mad that it was done without his permission.
Well, it sounds like it's not done very often because it's like not part of their custom, but that doesn't mean that's not possible.
Yeah.
But I think it was cool. So Robert Jordan does this sometimes where he'll like put in something in like, I don't know how to explain it. He'll put in something earlier in the book that ends up growing bigger later in the book. And what I mean by that is he had Elaine and Avienda have their bonding ceremony earlier in the book. And that in turn teaches Elaine a little bit how to do it on her own. So then it becomes a more important piece later in the book. And he's done that multiple times in like other books. I'll see like something done on a smaller, like, okay, in the last book, The Path of Daggers, he had Avienda unweave her weave for like her own reasons. And then a few chapters later, like Elaine had to do the same thing. So he does that where it comes into play multiple times and it kind of like builds on each other. And it's genius.
Yeah, seriously. And I was also surprised that that they were all able to bond him as their warder, Min included, when she's not even, I mean, really Elaine is the only Aes Sedai, so I thought that it would just be her or something like that. So the fact that it was all three of them when Min isn't even someone who can channel.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome.
But I think that goes back to Elaine and Egwene's ceremony, or Elaine and Avienda's ceremony, because there are women, like Aiel women, who want to become First Sisters that can't channel either. So like that's where she probably realized that it was still possible, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also Nynaeve's reaction to like all three of them being like, "We all love you, Rand. You should marry all three of us." And he's like, "Yeah, I should totally marry all three of you." And she's just going, "What? Wait, what? What?"
No idea. Yeah, I mean, I think to the reader, it's not that much of a surprise because we've been in all of their heads and we knew that it was like something that was kind of going on. But I'm surprised that Nynaeve didn't put up more of a fuss. That's something that I think is a little bit surprising, is like a lot of this stuff, like the relationship stuff, it's not something that's common in their world, but even though people are going against custom, it's not like a huge scandal, you know what I mean? Like people are like, "Oh, that's weird, why would you do that?" But they don't make too big of a deal of it at the same time, you know what I mean?
But I think a lot of it is like she was probably expecting them to be like, "What? You can't marry all three of us." Like she was probably expecting him to have to pick which one of them he wanted to be with.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, so when they were all completely fine with it and they were totally like, "Yeah, you should marry all three of us," she was like totally taken aback.
Yeah.
Probably the fact that she like babysat him, like she's known him since he was like a little kid.
Right. It's kind of weird.
Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, totally.
Like he's grown up and he's marrying three girls at the same time. Like
yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah, that whole scene cracked me up so much.
Yeah, I laughed multiple times too. And so Avienda and Elaine obviously are already really close and have spent a lot of time together. But I thought it was really cute how Avienda and Min like made a conscious effort to try and get to know each other, and how like they're different, but in some ways they're like really similar too. They like have a similar sense of humor, which I thought was funny. So I hope that they get more chances to hang out and get to know each other better, because I think they could be good friends. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it definitely is a little bit of a sister wives situation.
Yeah.
So, and then later in this section of the book, we find out who the Daughter of the Nine Moons is.
Mm-hmm.
I have been waiting for so long. I am excited that she's finally in, like, and it's funny because I knew that the Daughter of the Nine Moons was some sort of Shan-Chan royalty, but the very first chapter that's in her point of view, we don't know who she is. And like halfway through the chapter, I was like, oh my God, I know who this is. And I flipped to the end of the chapter where it said like her title, and I was like, yes, I was so excited.
Yeah, I totally didn't catch it until the end of the chapter where it said she was the Daughter of the Nine Moons, and I was like,
well, and then after that, we're like waiting multiple chapters for them to actually meet. Well, I think a couple chapters later, they do meet, but Tuon is like, she's wearing that veil, so they can't acknowledge her true identity or whatever. She's just a high lady when she's wearing that veil. And so there's even more chapters. It's not until they are actually trying to leave the city that Matt realizes who she is, which I thought was a really, well, it was fun to read because we know who she is, but Matt doesn't. But I love that Robert Jordan does stuff like that where like the reader knows more, and it just creates such a good tension because you're just like waiting on the edge of your seat until the character learns what you have learned.
Yeah, seriously. I also thought it was interesting that when they do meet and he knows who she is, he says that she's his wife, but she acts like that's completely normal. She just says, "Wait, don't say that."
Yeah,
like that.
And
like
then when he says that he's like kidnapping her, she just smiles. I was like, "What? You're like
she obviously knows about this too." But
yeah, I mean, and obviously the Shan-Chan culture is very into like omens and stuff, so maybe somehow she knows it. Oh, and the other thing I was thinking about, so maybe she knows something about the future from like various omens that she has seen and thinks she can interpret. But also, she had asked a Damani to tell her future, and then she slapped the girl afterwards, and then she was like all embarrassed about it. I don't know if you remember that part.
Mm-hmm.
It was talked about like in past tense, like she had already done it. And so maybe when we don't know what that girl said about her future, so maybe it had something to do with Matt.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I had forgotten about that part, but no, I do remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They never actually say what was said.
Yeah, so I definitely want to know what was said, but maybe that's why she seems like okay with it. I don't know.
That's totally possible.
Yeah. And I mean, so I love getting back into Matt's head and having so many, I mean, it didn't start until about halfway through the book, but we've got a lot of chapters with Matt in this section, or in this book. And I really loved getting back into his head, and he's so funny, and so much stuff always seems to happen to him, you know? I think something about like the first half of this book and like all of the Path of Daggers was that the point of views were all so spread out. Like we'd only get 1 or 2 chapters from each point of view before like switching storylines. And that just made it really hard to know where the book was going and just like to feel like we had direction. But in the second half of this book, we are mostly limited to Matt's point of view and Rand's storyline. And so, especially towards the end of this book, and Rand's storyline kind of merged with a couple other characters. Like they were so spread out before, and like separated, and some of the characters have started to like come together. And I think that's really helping with the momentum and feeling like the pacing is better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Matt's dynamic with Tylan is just so funny. Like he kind of likes it, but he kind of doesn't at the same time. And then I realized that we had seen him with Eludra a little bit. So that's like another group of characters that we haven't seen for a while, like Eludra and I can't remember his name, but the guy who runs like the traveling circus or whatever. Like they played a little bit of a part in this book. Nothing big, but Luca, that's his name. But Matt like went and touched base with them and talked to them. Anyways, when he was with Eludra, at first I didn't realize it, but later it becomes clear that he's also sleeping with her. And so Matt's like sleeping with multiple people. And at first I was like, shame on him because he's with Tylan. But I mean, he's not really with Tylan. And the way that Tylan is, I kind of feel like she wouldn't care, like that he's allowed to sleep with whoever he wants as long as she can sleep with him when she wants to. I don't know. That was really funny.
No, yeah, it was really funny because it is kind of weird. His relationship with Tylan is so complicated because in a lot of ways she kind of like she's pushy in a way that makes Fail look like a saint. Basically.
Yes.
Like she basically even tells him what to wear and everything. And yeah, and so in a way, like even though he probably only really likes being with her because she's like this lady who pursued him, and he's like, oh, this is awesome.
Before.
He likes me. Whereas I think probably she likes the idea of him more than actually him.
Probably.
I mean, the fact that she's telling him what to wear and in a way that even makes him feel ridiculous, where he's kind of going, right. Is she seriously making me wear this frilly stuff? Like, it's just,
but then he kind of grows to like it too, because I think at some point he tries to wear something less obnoxious, and then he feels like he's not dressed up enough or something, because it like grows on him.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, and what we learn in this book that what Tylan is doing kind of has a name, like in their culture of, I can't remember the city, I guess Ibudar. In like Ibudari culture, that it's common, or it's like a thing for women to have a guy that they call a pretty. It's like their last fling before they settle down or something like that. And how like that's so the other people in the castle or the palace where they are, and at like the inn that Matt keeps going to, like they all know that he's Tylen's pretty, and so they're like teasing him about it, and he's all embarrassed. It was so funny.
That whole section is really funny.
Yes, that's what I love about Matt's sections is they always make me laugh.
Yeah, I agree. Getting into Matt's head is just like really hilarious. He's really become one of my favorite characters, I think.
Yeah.
Ever since like the third or fourth book, whichever one, he finally is not possessed or asleep or sick the entire time.
Right. Oh, and that's interesting too because he, what's his name? Bail Domon finds him, and they end up, planning to escape together or whatever. But Bale obviously remembers Matt a lot better than Matt remembers him because he's, we're in Matt's head, and he's like, I kind of remember this guy, but like everything's really fuzzy, and that's because he was really sick because of the dagger during that part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so what I love about Matt, I think, or one of the many things I love about Matt, is that he puts on this front like he's a scoundrel and he like doesn't care about anybody. But when it comes to his actions, he always does the right thing or is trying to be a good person. Like, he is trying to help the Aes Sedai. He agrees to help the Aes Sedai that are in Ibudar escape, even though that's obviously going to make things harder for him, but he agrees to do it anyways. And then at the end, when he's like actually leaving, he sneaks into that Windfinder's room and says that he's going to set her free. And like, she's like, thank you so much. And he's like, oh, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me. But like, he's really doing it for her. Like, you know what I mean? So he tries to act like this tough bad boy who doesn't care about anybody, but he's such a softie on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so this is the first book that we really learn about Far Madding, which is a super interesting city. And I didn't remember this from there was a lot of things in this book that I didn't remember at all. It was like pretty much a fresh book. Like the only thing I remembered about this book was that he was gonna clean Sidene at the end. Like we've kind of been leading up to that. It's been mentioned a few times that Rand was wanting to do it. So I was pretty sure it was going to happen in this book, but other than that, I didn't remember anything about it. So I didn't remember anything about Far Madding. And it's such an interesting city that they have those ter'angreal that don't allow people to channel in the city. And the way that the women are the ones who are like more in power and even like almost abusive to the men because that one lady kept telling Min that she needs to like whip Rand to get him to like listen to her and like behave better, which was crazy. And their council, not council of elders, but like their leadership were all women and stuff. Like that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely really awesome. I mean, this series has a lot of like matriarchal societies and societies where like mostly it's the women who are in power.
Which is so interesting considering like the time period that it was written in. Like it was started in like the 80s, and fantasy in the 80s was just not this like feminist. So I mean, I think compared to maybe some of the things we see these days, it might not hold up as far as being super feminist, but especially considering what time it came from. And I mean, I think it does a pretty fair job. I think it does utilize stereotypes a lot, like stereotypes of women and men, and kind of like juxtaposing those stereotypes, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, even in the 90s, it would have like it's a lot more feminist. I mean, even a lot of fantasy written in the 90s is not like that at all. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love it. We got a dog back.
Yeah, I saw your door open and I was like, is that just a ghost or
It's a dog. I must not have latched it all the way. Okay. So, okay, there's a lot of like little characters that were introduced or reintroduced that have a lot of mystery around them. So one of them is we had like a really small point of view from Isam slash Luck or Luke. And I remember Lord Luke from Perrin's storyline a few books ago when he was in the Two Rivers. Do you remember him?
No.
So he was the guy that that Perrin. Okay, so he was the guy that seemed to somehow be able to be in Teleron Riyadh and in the real world. So Perrin would see him in Teleron Riyadh and try to like kill him because he was like killing wolves in Teleron Riyadh. And it said something about he looked. I thought they said that he looked like Lan, but in this book they were saying that he looks like Rand and like he could be Rand's uncle. And so there was also a scene where so the three women, Nynaeve, Elaine, and Egwene are meeting in Teleron Riyadh, and they were being spied on by apparently 3 different people, because one of them was a Black Aja woman that we heard from later. But then apparently there were 2 other people in Teleron Riyadh with them. One of them, we don't know who they are, and one of them was this guy that they said he looked like Rand. He could have been Rand's uncle. Anyways, we get a really short point of view in chapter 22 in this book from him, from his point of view, and I just said that twice. And it says in that chapter that he wanted to kill his nephew and the wench with him or something. And is that Rand's uncle? Like, I'm so confused with who this person is. His name is Isam, but then in the real world, like he was stepping in and out of Teleron Riyadh, and when he steps into the real world, he goes by Luke or Luck. I don't know how to say it, but L-U-C. And I feel like we've heard the name Isam before. I just like, I don't know who this is, you know, it's driving me a little crazy. I think it could be, okay, so Rand's, this is where I feel like I need a family tree or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we found out who Rand's parents were, and was there an uncle mentioned? Like, I don't remember. But the thing is also like, it's scary to try and research this stuff because you can't be like, I only want to know what we know about this character up until this book. Because and if you like look them up, you might get spoilers for like other stuff. So it's hard to like research and figure it out. Anyway, so we got a short point of view from this guy that raised a lot of questions for me as to who he is. Is he really Rand's uncle? I'm pretty sure he's evil. No, I know he's evil because I think he was meeting with Moradin or talking with someone who's on the bad side in his section. But it was like this really short, like 1-page thing from this guy, and then like we don't hear anything else from him. It's maddening. Another character that I'm suspicious of that showed up in this book is this Noel Charin guy, the old man who shows up and saves Matt from the Golem. I just think his timing was a little too good. Like, why did he show up right then? And then he seems to know things that he shouldn't know and, like, know more, like, historical stuff. So, like, I kind of wonder if he is a Forsaken or something in disguise. I don't know. But I'm very suspicious of this Noel guy.
That is a good point, that his timing was, like, a little bit too good, because...
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, at the end when they're trying to leave Ibudar, like, he didn't tell Noel that they were leaving, but Noel just shows up and he's like, hey, I was planning on leaving anyways. Why don't I just come with you? I was like, what? What are you? Who are you? I'm very suspicious of him. Let's see.
And another interesting part is when Rand has to be disguised as like some dude when he goes to visit Nynaeve, and then when he gets there, he mentions like he just drops some names from
the Two Rivers.
Yeah, the Two Rivers, and then so then that's her clue that like, oh, whoever the heck this guy is, obviously like,
right,
obviously he knows something because he mentioned names from the Two Rivers, and then. Yeah.
But I was surprised she didn't immediately know who it was. Like she was still suspicious and was like, "Who are you? How do you know those names?" In my head, I'm like, "It's obviously Rand. Who else could like change the way he looks?" But I guess she even says this is that she's like, "Where did he learn how to do that?" Because I guess she didn't realize that Rand also knew how to disguise himself that way. But it's like seems so obvious too. Like, why would you think it was somebody else?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that made me laugh. I really liked getting in Nynaeve's point of view a few times in this book because I don't know, in the past few books she's kind of been a little more frustrating for me, but in this book she seemed more like down to earth, and I think part of it is just being married to Lan is kind of like making her a better person a little bit. But I did enjoy her point of views a little bit more, and I don't know, she is really trying to help Rand. And I like that Rand's like, she's the only one that I trust to link with right now. Like, I'm glad that he's not so suspicious of everybody that he's too suspicious of her to link with her.
Mm-hmm.
So the one storyline that I feel like we're basically completely missing in this book is Egwene's storyline.
Yeah,
right?
she didn't show up at all, did she?
No, I mean, she showed up a little bit in the other storylines, but I don't think we got any point of views from her. And it's interesting because in the last book we ended with, in the last book we talked about her staying in wherever they were for a month before leaving, right? But at the very end of the last book, there's a quick scene that says like Egwene opens a gateway and they go to Tar Valon. And that's kind of how the last book ended it. But I think this book must be taking place during that like 1 month when they weren't doing anything. That's what I'm thinking, because we didn't hear anything about the war on Tar Valon starting yet. So I think that hasn't actually happened yet, even though that was like mentioned at the very end of the last book.
Probably.
Yeah. But yeah, we didn't see her hardly at all, except in like a meeting with Elaine and Nynaeve where they got spied on. So Cat Swain really grew on me in this book. I have had a feeling that she was a good guy since we first met her, and this book kind of cemented that a little bit. Like I do think she's good. And it was interesting to see her go back to Farmatting because I like didn't realize that's where she was from, and like all of that drama there was really interesting. And I like that she kind of coordinated and like took charge of keeping Rand safe when he was doing the cleansing of Sidene. Like that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Which that whole section, those last couple of chapters were a little crazy. We had all these Forsakens showing up, and I think we got some reveals that I like still don't quite understand. The one person that I think I figured out who it is, I mean, I think it was pretty clear that the Sindane girl is actually Lanfear. Did you get that?
I did not get that, but that doesn't surprise me because I've been thinking Lanfear can't possibly have actually died. Like,
Right.
she's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, well, I thought she was either Ossengar. I thought she was Ossengar, the person who used to be a female but is now in a male body. Like I thought that was Lanfear, but at the end of this book, I think they made it pretty clear that Lanfear is actually this Sindane girl. Just some of the things that she said. She's upset with Lews Therin and thinks that he has like chosen Nynaeve over her, and like there was some like revenge talk and just a few, I don't remember exactly, but a few other things from Sindane's point of view that to me made it pretty clear that she's Lanfear. So that one I got figured out. Arengar or Ossengar, wait, I always get the two confused. But one of them said, there was one of them that said something about like they created Trollocs back in the day. And I feel like we should know who that is, but I have no idea who that is. But I think that's supposed to be fairly specific and supposed to let someone know who that person is, but I don't remember So, I mean, it seems pretty clear that the Forsaken are being brought back after they die, and we definitely have had a lot of Forsaken die. So, I at this point have no idea who is like alive. You know?
Yeah, seriously. And then I keep there was that one Aes Sedai who's now a Damani who is named Tessie or something. Is that her name? Like,
Yeah.
I keep expecting her to be someone we know as well, because she's clearly only just been like with the Sul'dan for not that long.
Yeah. So she was in the last book. So the Aes Sedai Jolene and that one, the one that was captured named Tessie, is Teslin. And they were in the last book. They were together, and they were sent from the White Tower by Elida. And like we saw them in a few scenes with like Nynaeve and Elaine in that group, because they were all in Ibudar together. So that woman is from the last book.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so another thing, speaking of the Shan-Chan and who people used to be, Julian, he took one of the servants with him when they left, and her name was Thera. Do you remember who that is? You probably don't, because I probably didn't pick up on it the first time I read it. But so he keeps talking about this girl Thera and how he finally got her to agree to escape with him and all this stuff. That's Amathera. But she's
the Penarch of Tarabon.
Yeah. So when they came to eat, I think when they came to Tarabon, when Morghese was there, Soroth was like, "Look, and this is Thera. She used to be Amathera and a queen, but now she serves me." And then we haven't seen her since, and that like really freaked Morghese out at the time. Well, that is who Julian is now with, and like convinced to leave with them. So like that is really cool. But I don't think I caught that before.
Yeah, because I actually was wondering what happened to her. I didn't remember her name, but I remembered, like, you know, the Penarch of Tarabon was one of the Damani, and so and we haven't seen her since. So yeah, that I didn't pick up on either.
Yeah.
So that is really cool.
Yeah, so she's with Julian. Let's see. There were so many little things like that. And I'm sure there's even more that I missed, but it's like things like that that make rereading the series so much fun, because you like recognize those names and you know who people are. But even on rereads and stuff, there's just so much information that you still can't keep track of all of it. Okay, so when we were in Farmatting, you know, we think the whole reason we're there is to fight against, well, I mean, it is the reason we're there, but it's to fight against these Ashamen who, like, tried to kill Rand in the last book. And I thought it was not funny, but, like, I liked that Robert Jordan kind of flipped the script on us, and, like, that's what we were there for at first. But then when he goes to actually kill them, or thinks he gets that letter that says, "This is where they are, come kill them," which obviously is a super fishy situation that someone did that, but he goes anyways. And then we find out that it's Padan Fain that's there. Like, I did not see that coming at all. Like, I had totally forgotten about Padan Fain. We haven't seen him in like a really long time. And for him to just show up and be like the big twist at the end of this, I guess the big thing that happened at the end was the cleansing of Saidin, but still, the big fight that was sort of at the end of this, like, I did not see Padan Fain coming into the story, so that was a big surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was something, what was it? When Padan Fain is there and Rand is like going up some stairs to try and fight him, I don't know how it happened, but like the two, Deshiva and the other Ashaman, I don't remember, were already dead. We'd already seen their dead bodies. And somehow, I think Padan Fain, like, gave him a vision or something, but there was something about the Ashaman saying something about the Mahale is going to kill us, ... and then, like, that's all it said. That's suspicious. Like, I don't know if that was Padan Fain doing something to make Rand be suspicious of Taim, but like it made it seem like Taim kind of orchestrated the rebellion or whatever. Like, it seemed like Taim was telling them what to do. It wasn't really them. It was some sort of apparition that I think Fane created. Let me see if I can find it. Do you remember what I'm talking about? It's so hard because these are all like little details that are so easy to like miss or really get, you know? Let me check the chat and see if anyone, no chat. Oh, okay, so something else, I'll look this up in a second. Something else that I realized, okay, do you remember in the last book, there was a scene where Varen she was like questioning the different Aes Sedai who had captured Rand previously, and she put some sort of compulsion on them. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I think I figured out what it was. So in this book, there are multiple times where they're talking about how the Aes Sedai that had captured Rand have at this point all sworn fealty, and a lot of people were really surprised. They're like, even the Red Sisters, like, I don't understand why they did it. And I think that's what Varen was doing. Varen was compelling them to all swear fealty to Rand. That's what I think. Let me see, what chapter did this happen in? Okay, chapter 33. Okay, here it is. So Fane is at the top of the stairs. As soon as Rand stands in the room, fire and ice rage at his side. Okay, his side is hurting him. He takes some more steps. Fane says, I want him to know who was killing him. Talking about Fane. It's going crazy. Okay. Yeah, it says, Torval and Gedwyn came up the stairs with their cloaks over their arms. I say we aren't going near him until I know where the others are, Gedwyn growled. The Mahale will kill us if ... Without thought, Rand twists his wrists in cutting of the wind, and immediately, followed by the unfolding fan, the illusion of the dead men come back to life vanished, and Fane leaped back with a shriek. Blah, blah, blah. So I think that was Fane doing that, and it seems like maybe he was conjuring up a memory or like something that had happened, but yeah. So I found that really suspicious. It's only like a few lines and so easy to just brush over and just be like, whatever. But like, I feel like that's a clue. It makes me suspicious of Taim, basically. I think maybe he's got it out for Rand or something. Oh man, and then in that same chapter at the end when they like slip on the roof and they're like hanging off the edge, I thought for sure someone was gonna come save them or like I was thinking that they were gonna use the power and like keep them from falling off the roof. I mean, luckily they didn't get that hurt from falling off the roof, but like I thought something was gonna save them and nothing did.
It's probably what we're supposed to think.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like I said, the very last chapter, there was a lot of stuff that I feel like I still don't really understand. As far as like the Forsaken and who they all were. And we don't really get a good idea of like, if any of them, I guess none of them were killed with the people that were trying to protect Rand, even though Rand's crew lost some people. There weren't any, there were scenes where like people on Rand's side and the Forsaken were like fighting each other, but nothing like really in depth to say like what happened in those encounters. And I thought it was crazy that Shadar Logoth is now gone. Like somehow, I don't know what he did, but like it's completely gone. I don't know. I guess I can't really sit here and flip through. I was trying to see if something would stick out to me, but I just know there was a lot of stuff in here that I don't really know. Oh, okay. So this is something that I had just forgotten. But we find out who Asyngar was pretending to be. Like, we don't know who Asyngar is before he or she became Asyngar. But Asyngar was pretending to be Dashiva, which is one of the Ashamen that rebelled. So that was a surprise. This whole time he's been a Forsaken. And it was also interesting when some of the people protecting Rand came across a woman, and the Ashaman that's with them was like, she's holding Saidin. Because we knew that that was possible because of some of the people we've been introduced to, but that was definitely a surprise to them. And if it was she's holding Saidin, I think that means it was Arengar / Halima, who has been with Egwene. So Halima has been with Egwene and has been like trying to make her headaches go away, which is suspicious because I think maybe she's making the headaches be there in the first place or something. But yeah, so that person, we kind of know who it is. It's interesting because he shows us people from different point of views and tries to get the reader to kind of put together who these people are. And I mean, unless you're taking good notes, man, it can be hard.
really confusing, yeah.
But that's what makes rereading the series so fun. But I mean, even when you reread it, you're not going to remember all of the details either, so you still have surprises. It's crazy.
Yeah, seriously.
All right, so we are coming on the last 8 minutes of the show. So anybody who is watching, if you guys have anything you want to say or questions you want to ask before the live show ends, be sure to type them into the chat now. We've only had a couple people watching, so I'm not sure if we'll get any questions, but I wanted to throw it out there. But yeah, I'm excited for the next book. This one was a lot of fun. I feel like a lot of reveals happened, even reveals that I don't feel like I understand. And what's interesting is, so I have been doing these book diary videos, but I hadn't done the one for the Path of Daggers last month because I was moving. So I was kind of working on that while I was reading part of this, at least the first part of this, the first half. And a lot of the things that were in the Path of Daggers that I felt was just so slow, and I didn't see what was the reason for that information being there, actually made sense in the context of this book. I could draw a lot of lines between them and be like, oh, he mentioned this here because it happens here. I mean, I still wish that there had been a better way to do it to where the Path of Daggers didn't feel so slow, but a lot of that setup stuff that was in there ended up coming into play into this book.
Mm-hmm.
And actually doing that, reading part of this while working on that video, I think it helped me to draw those connections versus if I hadn't done that, they would have been so separated in my mind that I wouldn't have been able to draw those connections, I think.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think that that Hanlon guy who saved Elaine, but he was hired and we know that he's evil, I think we were introduced to him in the last book. I might be getting my books confused, but I think we were introduced to him in the last book, and I was only able to make that connection because I was looking through this information while I was reading this book. But other than that, I wouldn't have remembered that he had been previously introduced.
iPod is totally just sleeping on my desk, and she's covering her eyes with her paw, and she just looks really cute.
Aww, that is cute. All right, well, I think those are all the things that we want to say about this book. Do you have any final thoughts?
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see where the story goes from here, especially Matt's story with Tuan and his future wife. I want to see how that plays out. And it's interesting that the Shan-Chan are playing so much of a bigger part in the story. Like, I'm glad that they are. Obviously, we have the war on Tar-Valon coming up, and I want to know how that's going to go. Something we didn't talk about is there were a few scenes at the beginning of this book in the White Tower and with the group of Aes Sedai. Sorry, there's something weird in the chat.
Something
Can I
weird.
delete that? Okay, I just had to block somebody. That was weird. I forgot what I was talking about. And we were seeing them like hunting the Black Aja and stuff in the tower, and I think that's really exciting, and I think that's going to be more important when we get to the White Tower with Egwene's storyline and like them fighting and stuff. I'm interested. So I'm excited for the next book. For everyone who's watching this, just a reminder, in October, we're going to be reading book 10, but then in November, we're going to read New Spring, which is in publication order. We're taking December off, and then we're going to start January with book 11, putting us on track to finish the series by the end of April, which is exciting.
Yep, this is pretty exciting.
I mean, this is such an epic series, and I've literally tried to read the series so many times and not made it through. Granted, previous times it wasn't completed, and then I would just be like, oh, I need to start over, and then I would still not finish it all the way. So I'm really excited to finish it. There's so many like podcasts and websites and other things that I want to read and like get into, but they are all like spoilery for people who have read the whole series. So I'm excited to be able to participate in some of that stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next month.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.